Now joining me on the Peerless Boilers Hotline, Peerless builds America's best boilers, one of the best MLB insiders in the business, and that's Jon Heyman from CBS. Jon, Zach Gelb here, DARPATV.com in New York. Thank you for joining me, and how are you, my man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great myself. The Mets get another victory last night after dropping 3 straight to the Yankees. Really nice to see them bounce back in Tampa Bay. Jordany Valdespin, another surprise for the New York Mets, getting 4 RBIs. Look at the guys that have produced this year for the Mets. And let's start out David Wright because he has been great. But you look at these guys that come up from the minor leagues, Valdespin, Rotino. It's really remarkable what the Mets are doing.
It really is, and I think the expectations of last place weren't unreasonable at the time, but Terry Collins has done a very good job pulling them together, pushing the right buttons, doing the right things, and it's really amazing the way they performed through more than the first one-third of the season, so it's a very good job overall by the team. You're right, Wright has been superb, an MVP candidate, but he's getting a little bit of help from some surprising spots.
Ike Davis, he was supposed to have a monster season coming off an injury, had that valley fever in spring training. He settled in that Yankee series, has been off to a terrible start, hit a home run last night. Are things starting to change for the Mets first baseman?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we need to give it a little bit more time. The Mets have certainly given it a lot of time, and they're going to obviously be very patient with him here. They have been very patient with him. I think part of it is they weren't sure they had a better alternative. I personally would have set him down earlier to work it out because you can't really carry somebody with a 160 average. All they have. Let's hope so, because we don't want anybody's career to be derailed by valley fever or any other illness, and I hope that's not it. He was away for a long time, and maybe that threw his timing off, his confidence. Maybe that threw something off, and hopefully he can get back on track. Because we don't want to see anybody's career. It looked like a very promising career thrown off by some illness or absence or anything like that.
Do you believe the Mets will continue to show the same patience with Jason Bay? He's been 0 for 15 since returning from the DL. He's been terrible. The fan base is going to get on him when he returns for that Red Series. Will they continue to show the same patience with number 44?
I'm not so sure that they will. Nieuwenhuis has really been their saving grace out in the outfield. Duda's done a nice job as well. Those two guys need to play all the time. They want to do a rotation of the other guys. I'm okay with that at this point. Bay, whatever the reason was, it was a concussion. The defense just pulled in with lots of confidence. It's been more than 2 years at this point, and I love the guy, terrific young man, but I wouldn't be opposed to making him a platoon player or a halftime player at this point, because if this isn't an isolated 15 at bats, it's been a while here, and I do think he did have an excuse with that running headlong into the wall in Dodger Stadium for part of that time, but he really just has not produced at all particularly compared to his salary.
I agree with you. I think you have to keep Nieuwenhuis in the lineup. He's been another surprise story or Jordany Valdespin. He's really been solid on a consistent basis. But you also look at Andres Torres. He's been struggling in center. He has like a 200-something average. If it came down, because you have to keep Nieuwenhuis in the lineup, of pulling either Bay or Torres, who is more likely to get a seat on the bench?
I would say if it's between those two, I'd probably lean toward Torres for the bench. He has that one great year, 2010, where he helped the Giants win the World Series. I did not think that was a great pickup to begin with. I like Pagan. I understand Pagan was a little spacey at times, but to me, Torres is a fourth outfielder, a backup, something like that. Both Bay and Torres are both very good candidates for the bench. As I said, Duda and Nieuwenhuis have really performed and deserve to stay in there. But the other two guys at this point, I think, are fair to be part-time players.
We're talking to Jon Heyman, and Jon, Chris Young looked very good on the mound last night. He battled getting some base runners on the pass and was able to get out of the jams he put himself in. 5 2/3, over 100 pitches. Were you surprised that he broke over 100 pitches last night on only his second start coming back from injury? He looked really good on the mound last night.
A little bit, yeah. Coming back from a shoulder injury, he can fool people. You never know how long that's going to last. He does have the history of the shoulder trouble, which is very dicey. He's throwing 83 miles an hour or something like that. So he's obviously a very smart guy. So he's able to get away with more than some others might. And, I give him credit for whatever he's able to do. It's a bonus. It's gravy because there aren't too many guys surviving at 83 miles an hour. I know Jamie Moyer has tried and so far not succeeded this year. Nothing against him at 49 years old. But it's very difficult to succeed at the major league level unless you're a knuckleballer throwing 83 miles an hour.
You look at the pitching matchup tonight. You have R.A. Dickey, who's 37 years old. You have Price, who's younger, coming up, throws 94 to 98 miles an hour. Both those pitchers combined are 17-4 with 148 Ks. This is really going to be some pitching matchup tonight down there in Tampa.
Yeah, Dickey has really been an incredible surprise. His career has gone from journeyman to solid starter to star. I can't think of too many players who've had that career track, and you have to give him credit for sticking with it. Losing his fastball earlier and figuring a way, and it's not an easy way to figure because if it was easy, believe me, a lot of other guys would try it too. He's the only knuckleballer in Major League Baseball now, and I remember a time when you had Wilbur Wood and the Negros and all these other guys who were very successful, and they would start 40 games a year and do great and sometimes win 20 games, sometimes go 300 innings. Of course, we were in a different era then, but the knuckleball was much more prevalent back then for whatever reason. And Dickey's the only guy right now who's able to do it successfully. What's unusual about him is he has such control with it. I'm not sure how he does it. He doesn't walk anybody throwing a knuckleball. So it's moving, but it's moving somewhere in the strike zone usually. Just an amazing story.
And he's really young, too. You look at 37 years old for a starting pitcher. People would be hesitant about that, but for a knuckleball, that's really young. How much longer do you think Dickey could go on throughout the course of his career? Could you think he could go on for another 10 years pitching with the way he has been with this knuckleball?
Well, I don't want to predict that. Jamie Moyer is a real aberration, I think. These guys have had very long careers. Negro,
Wakefield
pitched a long time. Yeah, Wakefield did, but 47's quite a long time. So, he's getting a little bit later start in the major leagues. Maybe he's got a little bit less stress on his arm than some of the others. But you obviously don't have to throw very hard to be successful as a knuckleballer. But I think that would be unusual. If he has another 4 to 5 good years, I think he should be happy with that. Anybody pitching in his 40s, whether knuckleball or not, it's a terrific achievement.
We're talking to Jon Heyman. And, John, you look at the New York Mets, their bullpen has been the worst in the league. Sandy Alderson, Omar Minayas had a ton of players on this team that he grew up in his farm system. Now Omar is obviously out of town, but Alderson put together this bullpen, and it hasn't been great. What ways could we look for Sandy to improve this bullpen, or are they even going to worth to improve it come the trade deadline, depending on where this team is?
Well, hopefully they will improve it some at the trade deadline. There should be some relievers available, and perhaps they can find a good one to pick out. Tampa's been very good at getting relievers on the cheap, and there'll be guys who are, for whatever reason, whether on a non-contender or available. And if the Mets are in contention, they should try to bulk up that bullpen. Burdick has been decent. Francisco's been about what you'd expect. I understand, there aren't many Mariano Rivera, so I think our standards are probably high in New York for closer. But looking at his history, he's a closer, but probably generally a second division closer. Not to say that the Mets are a second division team, but he's not one of the top 10, 15 closers in the game. But he's done okay. Roush obviously has had problems lately, as he alluded to in his last interview. He's very upset at himself, and I think the fans are probably hard on him at this point. So that's been a bit of an issue. But yeah, their bullpen has been nearly a run worse than any other pen in baseball. So that's definitely an area of concern, an area where you can improve with one or two key pickups. And relievers should not be that expensive, and teams may be willing to pay part of some of these bigger contracts with guys who are available. There are a lot of guys who could be available. Cats from Minnesota and on Oakland, you've got Fuentes and Balfour. I mean, I know they don't sound like world beaters, but they don't need much to improve in that bullpen right now with the Mets.
Let's get to the Yankees. A-Rod had the big grand slam last night. The Yankees really look like they're starting to pick things up. They're on a roll at first place in the AL East. But, you know, it's kind of funny, and I guess this is what baseball has come to with the steroid era. I'm watching A-Rod's grand slam last night, and they start to talk about how he tied Lou Gehrig for the most career grand slams with 23. Let's say you're voting whenever A-Rod retires. Are you going to put A-Rod in the Hall of Fame? I know he's been convicted of using steroids in the past.
You know, I'm still going to consider Lou Gehrig having that record because there's an asterisk, a big asterisk on Alex Rodriguez's numbers. But at this point, I'm certainly going to seriously consider Alex Rodriguez and Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, the all-time great players who were steroid users, and try to figure out, and best I can, whether they would have been Hall of Famers anyway or how much it affected them. It's not easy because we don't know exactly when guys started taking them. Have an idea with Bonds based on the physiology, but the other guys, it's harder to tell. But I certainly will consider voting for them. I have not voted for McGuire. I have not voted for Palmeiro. The guys who I think used the steroids to become Hall of Famers, they were very good players or good players and boosted their careers through steroids, in my opinion. It's all based on judgment anyway. I don't vote for. I find McGuire's 70 home runs at age, I think it was 35 or 36. I mean, I find that just false. So that's what made him a Hall of Fame. That's why I don't vote for him. But I think there's a good chance I'll end up voting for Alex Rodriguez.
It's really interesting to hear people's take because I talked to Curt Schilling. Curt, he's adamant he doesn't want these players in the Hall of Fame. He thinks that he competed at the game without the steroids and he won, so he feels proud about himself. He still believes that Hank Aaron holds the all-time home run record. I talked to guys like Frank Catalanato, who's ashamed of what went on in the game, but, however, he did say he believes there should be a special wing in the Hall of Fame, so those players do get in it. But one guy's stance that we haven't heard from is Bud Selig. He really needs to take a legitimate stance on this because I'm thinking about this the other day. I'm having a conversation with my dad and I go to him, what happens in like 15 years when a kid goes to the Hall of Fame and he sees that Barry Bonds has the most career home runs but he's not in the Hall of Fame? It just makes no sense. Selig has to come out there and have a legitimate stance, and he's failed to do so.
Well, I think it's tough to have a stance. What can a stance be? I mean, as a writer, I like it, the fact that it's left up to the writers. I don't want Selig to impose his will on us. It's our judgment, and that's the way it's always been. No commissioner in the past has made a judgment on who should be voted for. There have been guys who were made ineligible to be on anything in baseball. That's Pete Rose and some other Joe Jackson. We're not eligible to vote on them because they're out of baseball, so to speak. That's a different issue. But I'm not. I don't know what Selig can say. There's different levels of usage here. There's guys who failed the test. There's guys who got named in Valco. There's guys who had admissions. Every case is its own. So I guess Selig could make a blanket statement that these guys don't belong to the Hall of Fame, but they didn't kick them out of baseball, so to me there would be a little bit of hypocrisy to that. It's really not up to him in terms of the Hall of Fame, I don't think.
You mentioned Pete Rose, and this has been an issue that's gone on for many years. My take on Pete Rose is this. He cheated. He did that stuff when he was a manager, but not when he was a player, to our knowledge. Shouldn't they put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame as a player, not compared to a manager? Because how many times does a manager have an all-time great career like a Joe Torre and not a great playing career? And Joe Torre's going to be a Hall of Fame manager.
Right. Yeah. Joe Torre was almost a Hall of Fame player too. His career was pretty darn good as a player. If someone voted for him as a player, I wouldn't argue strenuously against it. Although I wouldn't claim he's a Hall of Famer as a player. In terms of Pete Rose, I don't know whether I'm worn down on this or what, but what he did was obviously awful, and he lied about it for a long time until he got paid for the book. But I may be worn down on this. I'm at the point now where I think he should be in as a player. He's an all-time great player, and I think he paid his penance on this one. So I'm with you. He should be a Hall of Famer.
We're talking to Jon Heyman. And John, two more questions right before we let you run. Back to the Yankees. How close is David Robertson to returning? And when he does come back, do you think Girardi goes with Soriano as his closer, or does he go back to Robertson?
he's going to stick with Soriano. Soriano seems more comfortable as a closer, and the limited time we saw Robertson as a closer, I'd say at least he performed better as a setup guy. So he'll stick with Soriano and Robertson. You know, these side injuries, the oblique injuries are hard to predict, but I think he should be about 10 days away at this point.
Now, one of the best stories to me so far in the MLB season has been the play from Washington. You know, Gonzalez has looked well, especially the two young guys, though, Harper and Strasburg. What's the most impressive part about these two youngsters, for one, Jon Heyman?
Well, Harper, we all knew that he was an all-time power prospect, a once-in-a-generation prospect as a power hitter. But his speed and his hustle have been amazing, and I think they really probably help out the whole team. I know that Charlie Manuel felt that way when I talked to him about it, that Harper really, you know, set an example, even at 19, on how to play the game. And so I give him credit for that. The talent is something God-given, and it is amazing. Strasburg, you know, between the fastball and the curve, has got the best stuff in the game among any starter, I think. And too bad they're going to shut him down after 160 innings. I don't want to second guess it. They know the medical history better than I do, and you know there are all these different theories on it. But in terms of stuff, he's probably the best in the game. They were in a way fortunate to be the worst team in baseball 2 years running there, and to pick up great players. Not every year do you have a guy who's almost everybody knows is going to be a star at the major league level. This year in this draft, there were several very good players, but nobody who's an almost guaranteed star at the major league level at Strasburg and Harper. So they were fortunate there, but I give them credit for overcoming all the injuries. They've lost two closers. They've lost two catchers. They've lost two outfielders. It's really been a rough go for them.
Final one here, Jon, and you just mentioned that they're going to limit Strasburg's innings. You know, if this team's in a playoff race down the stretch, you know, Davey Johnson's going to get a lot of heat for that one. I know they know their medical history with Strasburg, but how do you not put your best pitcher on the mound if you're in, let's say, an NL East race or a wild card race now with there being two spots? Let's say if they're in a race, how do you not put Strasburg on the mound? He's been filthy.
Yeah, Johnson may get some heat, but it's really out of his control. It's an organizational decision. You know, it's one of those job of rules decisions that Cashman and the organization took. In this case, Mike Rizzo, the GM, is making the decision. You know, I've talked to Davey about it. It's not his call, and he is accepting of it. Harper, he wanted up in the major league right at the start of the year, and he had to accept their decision there. He turned out to be correct on that decision. He probably should have been up right at the beginning.
Yeah.
He was probably born at AAA. He didn't perform that batting 250, and he's obviously ready for the major leagues. But, you know, some decisions are just not made by the manager, and the innings limit, something like that, with most teams, is one of those decisions. Even when you have a veteran manager, a very veteran manager in this case, it's not his call, and it certainly isn't, I know. And he's not coming out publicly and saying anything about it, so it's hard to tell where he stands. On the Harper situation, it's not quite as serious because it doesn't involve injury history, and you know he knew where he stood, even though he didn't come out and say, I think we're making the wrong move, but you could tell by his you know, expressions that he felt that Harper was ready. In this case, he's going to go along and be a good company man and accept it. And if anybody wants to take up with anybody, it's Mike Rizzo and the National front office.
Jon, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it. Be well.
All right, thanks a lot. See you next time.